9 tiny habits that keep your legs strong after 70, even if you're not very active. Every morning, the residents of Maplewood Senior Living watched as 75-year-old Betty Chen made her way down the hallway with a confident stride. Unlike many of her neighbors, Betty moved with surprising agility and balance, even though she wasn't exactly a fitness enthusiast. Curious about her secret, Margaret, her 72-year-old neighbor, decided to ask her one sunny afternoon. "Betty," Margaret said as they sat together in the courtyard, "how do you keep your legs so strong? You're not hitting the gym, are you?" Betty laughed, shaking her head. "Oh, heavens no. I haven't set foot in a gym in decades. But I do have my little tricks. 9 of them, actually." Margaret leaned forward, eyes wide. "Tell me everything." "1. Ankle circles while brushing teeth." Betty lifted her foot and made small circles in the air. "Every morning while brushing my teeth, I do ankle circles. 10 in each direction. Keeps the joints loose and the blood flowing. And since I'm already standing there for 2 minutes, why not make it count?" Margaret nodded. "I can do that." 2. Heel-to-toe walks in the hallway. "Whenever I walk down the hallway, I do heel-to-toe steps," Betty said, demonstrating the slow, deliberate walk. "It strengthens my calves and improves balance. Plus, it makes a walk to the mailbox a mini workout." Pot 3. Calf raises at the kitchen counter. "Every time I wait for the kettle to boil or the microwave to beep, I do calf raises," Betty continued. She stood up, lifting her heels and then lowering them slowly. 10 repetitions, 2 or 3 times a day. You'd be amazed how quickly it builds strength in your calves. 4. Sit to stand from a chair. Margaret furrowed her brow. "What about sitting? Can you do anything while sitting?" "Absolutely," Betty said, sitting down and then standing back up without using her hands. Sit-to-stand exercises are fantastic for leg strength. Just 10 of these every morning keeps my quads and glutes strong. 5. Marching in place during TV commercials. "When I watch my shows in the evening, I use the commercial breaks to march in place," Betty said, pumping her arms. "Lifts the knees, gets the heart pumping, and keeps the muscles active. Plus, it's a great way to squeeze in some cardio without leaving the living room." 6. Stretching before bed. "Before I go to sleep, I do simple leg stretches," Betty said, extending one leg and pointing her toes. "It keeps my muscles loose and reduces cramping at night. A couple of minutes is all it takes." 7. Toe taps while sitting. Margaret tapped her foot on the ground. "Like this?" "Exactly," Betty said. "Whenever I'm sitting, watching TV, reading, talking on the phone, I do toe taps. Just lifting the toes and tapping them down works the front of the legs and keeps circulation moving." 8. Stair climbing for strength. Betty pointed to the small flight of stairs leading up to the second floor. "If you've got stairs, use them. I go up and down just once or twice a day. Slow and steady, no need to rush. It's like built-in resistance training." 9. Leg extensions while sitting. And finally, Betty said, extending her right leg straight out and holding it for a few seconds. Leg extensions. Simple but effective. Strengthens the thighs and improves knee stability. I do 10 on each leg while I'm waiting for my tea to steep. Margaret's eyes sparkled as she jotted down each habit in her notebook. "Betty, these are brilliant. I thought staying strong meant hours of exercise, but you're doing it in little bits all day long." Betty smiled, patting Margaret's hand. "That's the secret. You don't need fancy equipment or a gym membership. Just small, consistent movements that keep the muscles engaged. I may not be training for a marathon, but I'm training for life, and that's enough for me. Would you like me to add another section or adjust anything in the story? Here's the continuation of the story. That evening, as Margaret sat in her small apartment, she couldn't stop thinking about Betty's tiny but powerful habits. The idea that strength could be maintained through simple, everyday actions rather than intense workouts felt both liberating and inspiring. Margaret looked around her living room, trying to figure out how she could incorporate some of Betty's habits into her own routine. She started by heading to the kitchen. As she waited for the water to boil for her evening tea, she placed her hands lightly on the countertop and lifted her heels, rising up onto her toes. 1, 2, 3, she counted silently. By the time the kettle whistled, she had done 15 calf raises, her lower legs tingling with the unfamiliar but pleasant sensation of being worked. Carrying her tea to the living room, Margaret set the cup on the coffee table and sat down. What was next? Oh, right, sit to stands. Scooting forward in her chair, she crossed her arms over her chest and pushed herself up to standing, then slowly lowered herself back down. The first few felt easy, but by the 7th repetition, her thighs and knees began to tremble. She breathed deeply, focused on her form, and completed 10 reps before sinking back into the chair with a satisfied sigh. Margaret picked up the remote and flipped through the channels until she found her favorite cooking show. As the host began demonstrating a new casserole recipe, a commercial break flashed onto the screen. March in place during commercials, she remembered. Setting the remote down, Margaret stood up and began lifting her knees, one at a time, exaggerating the motion to engage her hips and thighs. It felt silly at first, but as she got into a rhythm, she could feel her heart rate rising slightly and her muscles warming up. When the commercials ended, Margaret sat back down, a small bead of sweat forming at her temple. She felt energized, more awake than she had in days. Maybe Betty's onto something, she thought, reaching for her tea. Later, as Margaret prepared for bed, she remembered the last habit on Betty's list: stretching. Standing at the foot of her bed, she extended her right leg straight out in front of her, flexing and pointing her toes. The stretch felt wonderful along her calves and hamstrings. Switching to the left leg, she held the position for another 30 seconds, focusing on her breath. As she settled under the covers, Margaret felt a sense of accomplishment. She hadn't gone to a gym or followed a rigorous exercise plan. She hadn't lifted weights or run laps, yet her legs felt stronger, more engaged, more alive. The next morning, Margaret woke up with a newfound sense of purpose. As she brushed her teeth, she lifted one foot and began doing ankle circles, just as Betty had shown her. The motion was small but deliberate, and it made her feel connected to her body in a way she hadn't felt in years. Later, as she walked down the hallway toward Betty's apartment, Margaret practiced heel-to-toe steps, concentrating on her balance. Betty was sitting outside on a bench, basking in the morning sun. When she saw Margaret approaching with a confident stride, she grinned. "Well, look at you," Betty said, patting the seat beside her. "Seems like someone's been busy." Margaret beamed as she sat down. "You were right, Betty. It's not about being a fitness buff. It's about staying in motion, even in the smallest ways. I did every one of your 9 habits yesterday, and I actually feel stronger." Betty chuckled and squeezed Margaret's hand. "That's the beauty of it, isn't it? Staying strong isn't about what you do once in a while. It's about what you do every day, even when it seems too small to matter." Margaret nodded, feeling the strength in her legs and the warmth of Betty's hand. "Well," she said, smiling, "I guess we better get moving. I still have a few more heel-to-toes to go before breakfast." Betty laughed, the sound ringing through the courtyard like a bell. "That's the spirit, Margaret. Strong legs, strong life." Would you like me to keep going or adjust anything in the story? Here's the continuation. That afternoon, Margaret decided to take her newfound routine outside. She stepped onto the walking path that wound through the gardens behind Maplewood. The sun was warm, the breeze gentle, and the scent of freshly cut grass lingered in the air. As she walked, she practiced her heel-to-toe steps, feeling each deliberate motion from her heels to her toes. With each step, she could feel the muscles in her calves and thighs engaging, steadying her balance. A few residents sitting nearby watched her with mild curiosity, and Margaret smiled, lifting her chin. "I may not be running marathons," she thought, "but I'm moving, and that's what matters." When she reached the end of the path, she found a bench and sat down to do a set of leg extensions. As she held each leg out, toes pointed, she felt a pleasant burn along her thighs. The ache reminded her that strength wasn't built overnight. It was built moment by moment, habit by habit. When she finally stood up to head back inside, her legs felt sturdier beneath her. And for the first time in years, Margaret felt not just older, but stronger. Would you like me to continue, or does this feel complete to you?